The bar was alive that night. Cigarette smoke hung heavy in the air, curling toward the dim lights above. The sound of glasses clinking mixed with loud laughter, sharp curses, and the low growl of country music from the jukebox in the corner. The wooden floor creaked beneath heavy biker boots, and the smell of beer was everywhere. It was a kind of place where trouble always lingered, waiting for the right moment to show its face. Emily moved through that noisy room with quiet steps. She carried a tray of drinks in her hands, weaving between the crowded tables. Her jeans were worn, her white shirt buttoned to the top, her dark hair tied back so it wouldn't fall in her eyes. She wasn't there to be noticed. She was there to work, to serve, to disappear in plain sight. But those who looked closely could see something different in her. Her eyes were steady, calm, almost too calm for someone working in a place filled with so much chaos. She did not laugh with the men. She did not join in the noise. She moved with discipline, like someone who had learned long ago how to stay strong in storms. Most people never noticed her. To them, she was only a waitress, someone who took their orders and cleaned their mess, someone invisible in the shadows of louder voices. But Emily carried secrets inside her, secrets no one in that bar could have imagined. And on that night, those secrets were about to be forced into the open. At a corner table near the back, a group of bikers had just rolled in. Their engines had shaken the ground outside when they arrived. Their leather jackets were patched with skulls, snakes, and words meant to frighten. They laughed too loud, shoved each other too hard, and demanded attention like wolves circling prey. The regulars of the bar knew what kind of men they were and tried not to stare. Emily felt the shift in the room as soon as they entered. She kept her eyes down, focusing on the tray in her hands. She told herself to stay calm, to move quickly, to avoid that table if she could. But she also knew fate had a way of cornering those who tried to remain unseen. She had felt it before, and she felt it again now. The air seemed heavy, like the stillness before a storm. The leader of the bikers was a tall man with arms covered in tattoos. A cool grin spread across his face as he watched Emily walk by. He whispered something to his friends, and they laughed. His eyes followed her every move, sharp and hungry, like a predator searching for weakness. Emily didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had been around men like him before. She knew the danger behind those grins. Still, she kept working. She brought drinks to the table by the jukebox, wiped a spill near the counter, and carried another tray toward the door. Her face gave nothing away. Inside, her heart beat steady. She had trained herself for years not to flinch, not to show fear. But the bikers were watching, and their patience was running out. The tall man slammed his fist on the table, loud enough to turn heads. He called out to her, his voice rough and mocking. Emily didn't answer. She turned her back and continued to serve another group. The bikers laughed louder, but there was anger behind the sound. They were not used to being ignored. They were used to being feared. And this quiet waitress, with her calm face and steady steps, was beginning to test their pride. The night stretched on, the noise of the bar mixing with the tension building in that corner. Emily could feel their eyes on her every time she walked past. She knew it was only a matter of time before something happened. She hoped it would not. She hoped the night would pass quietly. But deep down, she knew better. For trouble had found her before. And trouble, once again, was moving toward her like a storm ready to break. What the bikers didn't know, what no one in that bar knew, was that Emily was not who she seemed. Beneath her quiet face and her plain white shirt, she carried a truth stronger than any of the men in that room could have imagined. And before the night was over, that truth would silence them all. The night grew heavier, and the bar's noise only thickened with time. Laughter turned harsher, bottles slammed harder, and the jukebox screamed over voices that refused to quiet down. The bikers at the corner table had made the place their own, shouting over everyone, waving their hands like kings of the room. No one dared to challenge them. Not the regulars, not the bartender, and certainly not the men who pretended to stare into their drinks instead of looking toward the danger. But one person did not play their game. Emily. She moved with the same calmness as before, carrying a tray from one end of the bar to the other. She did not rush, and she did not stumble. Her face never broke its steady mask. It was as though she was blind to their mocking, deaf to their laughter. To her, they were just another shadow in a place already filled with shadows. Yet deep inside, she felt the shift. She could sense their hunger for attention, their growing need to tear into her silence. Emily had been in places like this before. Crowds of men testing the quiet ones, looking for cracks, eager to make themselves feel larger by making someone else feel small. And she knew very well that ignoring them would only last so long. The tall biker with tattoos running across his arms leaned back in his chair, his cruel smirk never leaving his face. He tapped his boots against the floor, his eyes locked on Emily. "Hey, sweetheart," he barked, his voice loud enough for the room to hear. "Bring us another round, and make it fast." Emily didn't look at him. She finished delivering drinks to the table by the window before walking toward the bar counter. The biker's friends roared with laughter, clapping their hands against the table. They weren't laughing at a joke. They were laughing at her calm, her refusal to bend, her refusal to fade. And in their world, that was a crime. The bartender glanced at Emily nervously as she placed the empty glasses on the counter. He opened his mouth to say something, then thought better of it. He knew this wasn't his fight, and he knew Emily well enough to understand she didn't want anyone to speak for her. She carried herself like someone who had already fought harder battles than any of them could imagine. The tall biker rose from his chair. His boots hit the floor with heavy thuds as he crossed the room. The music still played, but it seemed far away now. Conversations hushed, and eyes began to follow him as he closed in on Emily. She didn't flinch. She picked up her tray, balancing it against her hip, and turned to walk past him. But he stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "You too good to answer me, sweetheart," he sneered, leaning close. His breath carried the sharp smell of whiskey and smoke. His friends whistled from the corner, urging him on. Emily's eyes met his for the first time that night. Calm, steady, unbroken. She didn't speak. She didn't give him the reaction he wanted. She simply stood there, her face unreadable, her silence louder than any words. The biker's grin faltered for just a second, then returned, sharper this time. He reached out, grabbed the edge of her shirt, and tugged at it. "What are you hiding, ho?" he mocked. "Why so quiet? Got something under here you don't want us to see." The room tensed. A hush fell across the bar. Even the jukebox seemed quieter now. The regulars shifted in their seats, torn between fear and curiosity. No one moved to stop him. No one spoke. They only watched, their breaths caught in their throats, waiting for what would come next. Emily still didn't react. She stood firm, her eyes locked on his, her tray steady in her hand. That only pushed him further. His pride, swollen with drink and cruelty, demanded a victory. With one rough motion, he grabbed her shirt with both hands and ripped it open. The sound of tearing cloth cut through the silence like a blade. Gasps filled the room. Some men laughed nervously, expecting humiliation, expecting the waitress to fold, to shrink, to break in front of them all. That was a show they had paid for, the weak being broken by the strong. But what they saw instead froze them all where they sat today. The sound of ripping cloth cut the bar in half. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The tray in Emily's hand slid against her side, but her body did not shake. She stood in the center of the room with her shirt torn open, the cool biker grinning at his victory. His friend slapped the table, ready to laugh at her shame. But the laughter never came, because what they saw was not weakness. It was not embarrassment. It was something they could not have imagined. Across Emily's chest, inked deep into her skin, was the emblem of the United States Marine Corps. The eagle, globe, and anchor sat proudly over her heart, sharp lines and bold black ink that carried more weight than any words. It wasn't just a tattoo. It was a story, a scar made of ink, a badge of sacrifice. The bar fell silent. The biker's grin faded. His hand, still holding the torn edge of her shirt, trembled slightly. He had ripped open her clothes expecting to reveal something small, something private, something to make her break. Instead, he had uncovered a truth larger than himself, larger than anyone in that room. Emily didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on his, calm and unshaken. Her chest rose and fell with steady breaths, as if daring him to keep looking, daring him to understand what he had just done. The biker's friends shifted in their seats, unease spreading across their faces. Their laughter died in their throats. The regulars, who had been too afraid to speak, now stared wide-eyed at the woman they thought they knew. This was no ordinary waitress. She was a Marine, and that truth landed heavier than any punch, louder than any threat. The tall biker stepped back, his hand falling away as if a tattoo had burned him. His cruel grin was gone, replaced by a face that suddenly looked small and uncertain. He had wanted to show the world that she was weak, but the truth revealed he was a weaker man. Emily slowly adjusted her torn shirt. She didn't rush, and she didn't cover the tattoo completely. She let it remain visible, not as a weapon, not as a boast, but simply as a fact. It was a part of her, one she had never asked anyone to respect, but one that demanded it all the same. The silence in the bar was heavy now, heavy with shame, heavy with respect, heavy with a sudden realization that they had misjudged the quiet woman who carried their drinks. Emily did not speak. She didn't need to. Her silence was stronger than any words she could have used. Inside, though, memory stirred. She had gotten that tattoo years ago, when she was young, desperate to escape the poverty that had caged her. She had enlisted, not for glory, but for survival. The Marines had taught her discipline, had forged her spirit in fire. She had marched through deserts, slept under the stars with fear pressing against her chest, and fought in places most of these men could not point to on a map. She had lost friends, faces she still saw in her dreams, voices she still heard in the silence of the night. And when she came home, she carried all of it inside her. She never bragged. She never demanded recognition. She simply worked, kept her head down, and lived quietly, because the tattoo was not a decoration. It was a memory, a reminder of lives given, of battles survived, of nights when she had to be stronger than she ever thought she could be. Now, in this smoky bar filled with men who thought themselves tough, her truth had been revealed without her consent. Yet even here, she refused to be shaken. The tall biker swallowed hard. His pride had collapsed under the weight of her story, a story he hadn't even heard but could see written in the lines of that emblem. He looked around the room, but no one supported him now, not even his own crew. They sat stiff, their eyes lowered, ashamed of having laughed moments earlier. Emily straightened her shoulders. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply turned and walked back toward the counter, her step steady, her head held high. The bar watched in silence. And in that silence, everyone understood something they had forgotten. True strength is not loud, not cool, not a fist slammed on a table. True strength is quiet. It is steady. It is carried in scars, in discipline, in silence that does not break under pressure. The biker had tried to expose her. Instead, he had exposed himself. The bar had never been so quiet. The smoke still curled in the air, the jukebox still hummed a soft country song, and glasses still rested on tables, but everything felt frozen. Every pair of eyes followed Emily as she walked back toward the counter. Her shirt was torn, her tattoo half visible, but her steps were steady. She carried herself with a dignity that no one in that room could match. The tall biker remained rooted in place. His fists clenched and unclenched, but his courage had left him. He had ripped her shirt to shame her. He had wanted to show her weakness. Instead, he had shown his own. His grin was gone. His pride was broken. His friends avoided his gaze, shifting uncomfortably in their seats, ashamed of what they had cheered moments before. Emily set her tray down behind the bar, adjusted her torn shirt, and continued her work as if nothing had happened. She picked up a glass, wiped it clean, and placed it neatly on the shelf. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke louder than any words could. For a long while, no one dared to move. The regulars stared at their drinks, replaying the scene in their minds. They thought about how they had once seen her, just a waitress, quiet and plain, someone unimportant. But now they saw her for what she truly was. Not just a Marine, not just a survivor, but a reminder of what real strength looked like. The tall biker finally stepped back, his boots heavy on the floor. His voice, once sharp and cruel, was gone. He muttered something under his breath and returned to his table. But he couldn't sit still. His shame was too heavy. Within minutes, he and his crew rose from their seats and walked out, their boots echoing against the wooden floor. The roar of their motorcycles outside filled the night air, and then they were gone. The bar exhaled. The tension that had gripped the room slowly eased, though no one returned to their laughter. It was as if everyone knew they had witnessed something they could never forget, something that would live in their minds long after the bar closed. Emily kept working. She poured a drink for a man at the end of the counter, wiped down the tables, and carried on as though the world had not just shifted around her. But to everyone else, she was no longer invisible. She was no longer just a quiet waitress. She was something greater. In the days that followed, the story spread. People in town whispered about the night the biker tried to shame Emily and instead revealed her truth. Customers who had never spoken to her before now nodded their heads respectfully when she passed. Strangers thanked her quietly for her service. The same men who once ignored her now noticed the strength she carried in silence. But Emily did not bask in the attention. She never bragged. She never told her story. She kept her head down and did her job just as she always had. Because for her, the tattoo was not a symbol to be flaunted. It was a memory, a piece of her soul carved into skin, carrying both honor and pain. Late at night, when the bar was empty and the lights were dim, Emily sometimes touched the ink on her chest and thought of the friends she had lost, the battles she had fought, the fears she had survived. Those memories were heavy, but she carried them with quiet strength. She knew the world would never fully understand what it meant to live with those scars. And she didn't ask it to. What mattered to her was simple: to stand tall, to endure, to keep going no matter what storm came her way. The biker never returned to that bar. Perhaps shame kept him away. Perhaps he couldn't face the memory of the night he was defeated without a single punch thrown. But everyone who was there remembered, and they carried that memory with them like a lesson burned into their hearts. The lesson was clear. True strength is not found in cruelty, in loud voices, or in fists slammed on tables. True strength is quiet. It is steady. It is dignity in the face of humiliation. It is courage that does not need to be proven, only lived. Emily showed them all that night that the strongest souls often walk among us unseen, dressed in simple clothes, carrying heavy stories in silence. And sometimes it takes a single moment to remind the world to respect what it cannot see.